Before Steelshod sets out, I should mention a few things that got lost in the excitement of the last few posts, or just my own shitty memory. In no particular order, Agrippa did manage to stabilize Lord Wigglesworth, saving his life, though not the full use of his leg. Both Volk and Wigglesworth are now crippled but alive and on their way to healthy, thanks to Agrippa and Steelshod. Both would be dead had things played out the way I expected. And what about the other merc groups? The Sons we know about, as they stuck with Steelshod, but the others stayed at Kilchester. When Steelshod met Marshall's army, they saw Bertram the Bold, and what's left of his bold brotherhood of pikemen, still kickin', highly esteemed after their service and sacrifices at Kilchester. The smaller Dusk Riders, the Kirky mercs led by Sir Crispin, fared worse. Lost most of their men during the campaigns in the south, dissolved by the time the Cadian-Svardic War winds down. The Glacial clan is still in the company of the Cadians as well. What's left of them, anyway. Corloncan seems interested in forging a more serious alliance, putting their historic enmity behind them. Imon still lives, and wishes Cara all the best. There was also a moment after Marshall and the armies returned, where we thought we'd have to lose Felix as a main PC. He meets up with Preston Chatsworth, his liege, and offers to return to his service. Presty is glad to see his childhood friend and loyal vassal. He respects Alexander hugely, and under normal circumstances, might even be fine allowing Felix to serve in Steelshod. But at the same time, retaking Chatsworth from the Lorenettes, the loonies as the Cadians often call them, will likely be no easy thing. While they discuss their plans, Felix gives over the majority of his pay from Steelshod to Preston. Tells him he's owed a great deal more than that as well. Chatsworth tells Felix that if he is willing, he should continue to serve in Steelshod. As good as his bowmanship is, the hardest part of taking back Chatsworth won't be the fighting. It will be the rebuilding after. If serving in Steelshod can get Felix this kind of gold, it's the single best way he could possibly serve Chatsworth. Felix has grown quite fond of Cara, so he needs little encouragement to stick around the company. Steelshod has also gathered a few small fragments from the pock-like craters scattered around the countryside. These fallen stars seem to have cores of pure, strange metals beneath the layers of scorched slag. Some seems to be high-purity steel, as well as other metals. In too small quantities to be very practical, but it clues them that finding a larger chunk of the fallen comet could be highly valuable. Most important of all, however, is that Brutus Varley has begun accompanying Alexander and Steelshod after the event with the assassins, and he has offered to accompany them on their hard road to Tarathia. He knows that even if they arrive before the Svards, with the greater portion of the Serpentes away, Nahash will be under-garrisoned and potentially outnumbered by the Svards. The services of a skilled strategist could make all the difference. Varley recognizes that there's a real chance the journey will kill him, of course, but he's long since accepted his impending death. And besides, he feels like a new man ever since following Agrippa's advice a few months earlier. He seems downright excited to go on one last adventure, and shows great interest in taking Alexander under his wing. He says Alexander has the makings of a world-class strategist, if he studies hard and uses his head. So, Steelshod sets out on the long road to Tarathia. Their company numbers 32 now. The Sons in even 10 after their losses during the Firefall. With Varley and Torthian's 210, they are just shy of 100 strong. Steelshod mostly handles the scouting, as their people know the area better. Heading due east, their route will pass through the Unkari Hills. They stay on alert, guarding for possible attacks by the Unkar. As this is Cara's native land, she leads the scouting parties, and she is present on the second day when contact is made with the Unkar. Cara has come a long way from the terrified rape victim on the run she was when she left these hills. She identifies herself as Cara, daughter of Cailan, who was, at least until recently, the head of the Cruach clan, and demands that she and her companions be hosted by her father. Behind Cara, Felix, Levin, and Amos have drawn bows and taken aim at the Unkar. Some of the stories have made it even this far, particularly the story of how a score of mercenaries in brown cloaks came through the hills, killed the chiefs of 2 clans, and took the daughter of the 3rd chief as they left. The terrified Unkar agree to Cara's demands. The Unkar meet Steelshod in a clearing come nightfall. Cara notes that all 3 of the primary clans of the hills have come. Her father's clan, the Cruach, is the most represented, but she also sees warriors and women from the Don Quig and the Bon Capal. The Unkar outnumber Steelshod and the Serpentes. Torthian seems unconcerned. Alexander and Yoren find it refreshing to be in the company of a battle commander that shares their sensibilities. In general, working alongside the Serpentes, even just for a couple of days, has really hammered this home. Every single Serpentes knight is a self-sufficient unit with a variety of skills. Their training demands that they be literate, bigger than it may sound to us, competent administrators, practiced warriors, and develop a variety of personalized specialties. They wander into the heart of the Unkar camp, and from the start, it's clear that it is the Unkar that find themselves on edge, nervous, even a little scared. Cara's father, Cailan, approaches, introduces himself to Steelshod. Alexander and Yoren stare at him impassively, giving no greeting. He turns to Cara, looking for an appeal. She crosses her arms over her chest, glares, asks him where his friends the Svards have gone. Cailan's face falls. He tries to explain all that's happened. Steelshod shattered the Svardic forces that had been left in the hills, no doubt originally planning to steer Cailan and his kin into a full-on assault on the Cadians. Instead, they struggled amongst themselves, disoriented by the Svardic curse that still persisted upon them. Over time, the Vlari magic wore off, and the clans found themselves disjointed, damaged, and mostly leaderless. Cailan took the opportunity to annex the Dorn Quig and the Bon Capal, and eventually learned from them that Cara had last been seen in the company of the invaders that had so devastated their clans. Ultimately, Cailan feels he owes Steelshod a debt of gratitude. They were the bitter pill that the Unkar had to swallow in order to reunify, and now, Cailan believes he can forge their clans into something greater. He apologizes to his daughter for not being able to resist the Svards, and thanks Steelshod for returning her to him. At this, Cara laughs in his face. She isn't returned to anyone. Cailan failed her during the worst moments of her life. Perhaps it is the fault of the Vlari priests, but she can't easily forgive him nevertheless. And, more importantly, she has a new home, on the road with her company. She has new friends, and she reaches behind her to grab Felix's hand when she says it, knowing without looking that he'll be there, knowing he'll clasp her hand in return. They have a task set before them that is far more important than anything Cailan has ever done with the Cruach, and, more importantly, she says, than anything Cailan will ever do. She is Cara Cruach no longer. She has no interest in remaining a part of this clan. Now she is Cara Cruach Bróg. Cara Steelshod. Steelshod is on edge, in case Cailan takes this poorly, ready for a possible fight. But Cara's father just deflates. He tells his guests to enjoy the Unkari hospitality, withdraws, sits at the edge of the clearing, watching in silence. Alexander approaches Cara, She is sitting with Felix, leaning into him, blinking away a few manly tears, shaking with barely contained rage. Felix is holding her, somewhat helplessly, not sure what to say. Alexander tells Cara he supports whatever decision she feels she must make, and Steelshod will always be her clan if she chooses to stay. But, for all her father's failures, it does not seem that he would have failed her quite so spectacularly, were he not ensorcelled by the Svards. And Alexander has seen other decent men, his countrymen, turned to wicked deeds by Vlari mind control. He suggests that perhaps Cara herself would feel better if she could truly recognize this fact, and let go of some of the hatred and betrayal she feels about her father. Cara considers Alexander's advice. Felix, in his own rough way, tells her Alexander probably has a point. Though, personally, he'd just as soon kick Kailan in the arse and never look back. Before the night has ended, Cara approaches her father. They speak quietly for some time. She tells him that Imon and the Glacial are alive, and in Arcadia, forging an alliance with the Cadians. She tells him that she's found someone she cares deeply for. She tells him how much it hurt that she was abandoned during her darkest hour. Kailan mostly just listens. It's well past midnight by the time their conversation winds down. Cara is still not happy with her father, but she can admit she doesn't hate him. He asks if she meant that nonsense about forsaking her people. She tells him she meant it, but she does wish him and the Cruach well. She gives Kailan a good portion of the gold she's earned, as she doesn't have much use for it. Tells him to use it wisely, to help secure a lasting future for the Unkar. Because raiding the settled lands, herding cattle on the borders, is not going to sustain their people. Not in the long run. Most of Steelshod see the night in the hills as a pleasant distraction from their mission. One in which Prudence and Perrin have somewhat public sex, and Prudence discovers that she will never, ever drink mead again. One in which Leon discovers his love of Unkari gambling games and casual blood sport, getting into several bare-knuckle fights before Michel puts a stop to it. Just a night of good food and mead, shared with strange but hospitable folk. Cara had a more difficult night than most, but come dawn, she rides out with everyone else, feeling as though some weight, shackled deep inside her, has come free. Cara Steelshod. The name may sound silly to most Middish, but to her, it's the start of a whole new life. Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Taleforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.